Well, my heart's doing fine this morning, but my sciatica's not doing real well. That's not good when you're getting ready to take a trip to Honduras. The truck ride will be a killer, I'm telling you. Do you realize that in 2011, the School of Hope was established, July 2011? There was a group of us that were in Honduras, and the School of Hope came into existence as we know it today. And so I want to take this time to especially thank all of those who have over the years supported the School of Hope on a monthly basis. And when we began that work, it was just a monthly basis, and it still is. The School of Hope exists month to month because of people, individuals that have made a commitment to support the School of Hope. And so we just want to thank you for that. It costs about $40 a month for a child to go to school, and that includes meals, books, everything. And let me tell you, thousands of people literally have been touched in some form or fashion because of the School of Hope. And every child there is taught the gospel. And most of those children that have gone through that school have obeyed the gospel. And now we have the amazing thing is the lady who is now the director of our school. She would be like the principal. She is a graduate of the School of Hope. And so it's amazing how God works all these things out to His glory. And so that is an amazing story, and God continues to use the School of Hope as a tool. Someday He may decide that the School of Hope has done what it was supposed to do. But right now, we give Him the glory for all of the things that are happening there. You know, and by the way, the flight is still on to Honduras. I've been checking this morning with the airlines. It hasn't been canceled yet, but hopefully we're going to get out of Houston before the hurricane rains come. Usually you're worried about getting out of Honduras, but it's amazing this time getting out of Houston. So every one of you here this morning probably have a cell phone. If you have a cell phone, why don't you just hold it up? Yeah, just go ahead and hold it up. It'd be amazing to see how many people have cell phones. Yeah, go ahead and turn those lights on, put them right in my eyes. Yeah, be a star. Everybody just about has a cell phone. Have you ever, as you are calling somebody on your cell phone, like every time you call them on that cell phone, they don't answer. They don't answer. And I'm probably one of the worst ones about that by not answering sometimes, but they don't answer. But what you get when you make that call is you get something like this: "I'm sorry I missed your call," or "I'm sorry I could not take your call. Please call back," or "I'm sorry I'm not available to take your call," when in just a few minutes they call you right back. So they were available, they just didn't answer the phone. Or maybe dozens of other things that you see on a phone when you're trying to call someone. However, the truth of the matter is their lack of availability is not in any way change the fact that you were trying to call them, that you needed to tell them something that in some cases was important, maybe sometimes not as important, but you needed to talk to them. But even a bigger question we have this morning is God calling you? Is God calling you? Is He inviting you to do something that will cause you to get out of your comfort zone if you were to answer the phone call that God might be making to you? Is God sending you messages on that phone that maybe you're ignoring? In Luke chapter 6, verses 12 through 16, you might want to turn there. This is one of the days in the life of Jesus that where Jesus went out to the mountain to pray. And he spent all night in prayer. And when the morning was come, he called his disciples to himself, and from there he chose 12, who he also designated as apostles. Now, we don't know that day exactly how many disciples were called. Usually there was a large group of disciples that were following Jesus. You go to the Sermon on the Mount, there was a large group. You go to Mark chapter 6, where Jesus was preaching at Gennesaret. There was a large crowd of people there. So we don't know exactly how many people were there, but we know one thing, there was more than 12. There was more than 12 there that day. In fact, there were so many there that day that Jesus had to make some choices as he was looking to do some things there. I wonder, as I've looked at this, if there were any disciples. Now remember, disciples are just they were just followers of Jesus, but I wonder if there was any of those disciples that morning who Jesus called who decided not to show up at that particular meeting. It's an amazing thought that one of the attributes that created the opportunity for Jesus to select those apostles was availability. They showed up. At least those 12 that day showed up when Jesus called them. You know, we don't know. Some of these men were fishermen. Some of them were, we know one was a tax collector. Others probably had other skills that we don't know about. But in other places, it describes these people as being ordinary people. And when we think about ordinary, what do you think about? Well, they're just common, everyday, ordinary folk, as the old timers would say. Just ordinary folk, you know. And when we think about that, that gives me encouragement, okay? That's encouraging to me because that makes me a candidate. That makes me a candidate for God to do great things through my life, to do great things through your life, because we're all just ordinary people, aren't we? Just ordinary people. Let's look at just for a few minutes the difference between ability. Now, you notice these words. You might want to write these down. Ability and availability. Ability and availability. When you look at the definition of ability from the dictionary, there's a lot of terms that describe ability. Talent, skill, artistry, expertise, aptitude, mastery, competence, proficiency, qualification, know-how. We could go on and on with some other terms that would describe that word. But when you look at the dictionary's definition of availability, there's really three things there that stand out. Number one is to be at someone's disposal. Number two is to be present or ready for immediate use. Or number three, willing to do something or assume a responsibility. An interesting fact is that a person can have all the talent in the world, but if it's not available to God, for God to use those talents, then what benefit are they to others and to increase God's kingdom? You know, if you turn over to Matthew chapter 25 and look at verses 24-30, that's verses 24 through verse 30, that's really a scary text right there. And you're all familiar with that, about the talents that were given out and how that those talents were used or not used. And for the one that didn't use the talents, look at what took place there. The master took the one talent away from that person, and the problem is that he was scared to use the talent that God had given him. And the scary thing is for us is look what happened at the very end of that in verse 30, when he didn't use the talent or the ability that God gave him, and what the results were. You know, the truth of the matter is God is looking for those who are available. That's what God's looking for. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout all the earth to strengthen those whose hearts, now get this, whose hearts are fully committed to Him. 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 9. You don't think God's not in control? You don't think God's not looking? You don't think God's not giving us opportunities to do His work? God is. God is. Now, what God is not looking for, here's what God's not looking for. He's not looking for the most attractive people. He's not looking for the most intelligent people. He's not looking for the strongest person. He's not looking for the wealthiest person. That's not what God's looking for. But sometimes that's what we're looking for. But what the Lord is looking for, He's looking for something totally different. He's looking for a heart that loves Him, a heart that is surrendered to His will and what He wants done, and for a person who is passionate about His purpose and is willing to put His purpose first. He's looking for one who will humble himself and realize that he needs God. He's looking for people who seek His face in whatever situation that may come up in their lives. They're going to look to God for the solution to the problem. He's looking for people who resist their natural inclinations toward self-reliance. I don't need anybody. I don't need anything else. What God is looking for, He's looking for people who have God reliance above everything else. You know, when we think about availability, it's about being ready to put God first in our lives. It's a state of mind, and I don't mean it's our heart. That's where our mind is, our heart. In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, it says, the prophet Isaiah answered his own calling when he said, "Here I am, Lord, send me. I'm available. Just send me." And so you see, availability is a state of mind. It's listening and responding, looking for the needs, and taking the initiative to do something about them. In 2011, we saw some kids in a dump, and there was a need there. And we decided to take the initiative and try to do something about it. And God has blessed us greatly. It's doing the jobs that I don't have to do. Sometimes we say, I don't have to do that. No, you don't have to do that. But God may have wanted you to do that. Or doing the jobs that no one else really wants to do. A lot of times we find ourselves not doing jobs because we don't want to do it. And let me give you an example. We got VBS coming up. And by the way, this is the VBS chart up here. VBS is going to be at night this year. So that should make a lot of us available to be able to help with VBS in some form or fashion. So we have this list that Tyler has made. And so when service is over today, make yourself available and come up here and sign up to do VBS so that VBS can be something that will be glorifying God in our community and being able to teach children about Jesus. You want to make a difference? Make yourself available for VBS. We've got Children's Church down the hall here. Make yourself available for Children's Church. We need Sunday school teachers. Make yourself available to teach Sunday school. We've got LTC that'll be, cranking up in the fall. Make yourself available to help in that. There's just so many things, so many areas of work that we need people that have a heart that is available to do what God wants them to do. God can and will use you if you'll let Him. There's the problem. Sometimes we don't let Him. We don't let God. Our world is, the world that we live in today, we're often overwhelmed by the sense of personal insignificance. And what we mean by that, often a person likes to feel, that they're just an expendable commodity. A sense of complete uselessness. Believing I'm just one little speck in this world. And so how can I make a difference? What can just one do? You all know the story of Helen Keller and all the obstacles that she overcome in her life. But listen to what she said. She says, I'm just one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do. Folks, let me tell you, there's something you can do in this congregation that's going to glorify God. And God's calling. The phone's ringing. The question is, are you answering it? Throughout the Bible, we see God using people who were not perfect, who were not popular, who were not rich, who were not successful. God used people who were available. People who were available. I mean, look at Noah. You know, all know the story of Noah. Noah made himself available when God told him that he wanted to build an ark. He didn't have a lot of questions for God about why do you want to build an ark? I mean, after all, it had never rained like we know the rain. So why in the world are you going to want me to build an ark? He didn't have all those questions. He simply listened to God's instructions, and they were very detailed, by the way. And Noah did all that God, the Lord, commanded him, Genesis chapter 7, verse 5. He made himself available, and God used him. Abraham said yes when God asked him to sacrifice his only son in Genesis chapter 22. In verses 1 through 9 and verse 11, he said, here I am, here I am. And because he said that, God spared his son Isaac. You see, God is always looking for our yes. God's going to accomplish his will, but he's going to give us an opportunity to be a part of it. And isn't that a great blessing? That he has chosen us to be a part of accomplishing great things here on this earth. He wants us to trust him even when he asks us to do things that defy logic. I mean, when you read the Bible, there's sometimes some things that are done that defy logic, human logic. Jacob, when God appeared to Jacob in a dream, and Jacob answered in Genesis chapter 31, verses 1 through 11, here I am, here I am. He followed God's instructions, and God began what would become the nation of Israel because he followed God's instructions. Moses, when Moses heard God's call to him from the burning bush, he responded in Exodus chapter 3, verse 4, here I am. In the New Testament, it records Ananias in Acts chapter 9, verse 10, responding to God with, here I am. He was told to communicate the truth about Jesus to Saul. Now, you talking about defying logic. After all, God, don't you remember? Here's a man that arrested, tortured, and at the very best was an accessory to murder of Christians, of your followers. And you're wanting me to go and talk to this man? You think Bill Smith may have felt that way when he went and talked Phil Robertson? May have had some of those same thoughts. Ananias was very afraid, but he made himself available to God. And another one, you look in Luke chapter 1, verse 28. An angel came to Mary. You're talking about defying logic. That defied logic, did it not? That an angel came to Mary. And while she didn't fully understand everything that the angel told her, she responded with, I am the Lord's servant. I am available. She made herself available to God. He has always underscored individual involvement and availability, and he still does. I mean, think about it. How many did it take to help the victim who got mugged on the Jericho road? Just one. Just one who made himself available. One good Samaritan. Not a Jew, not a holy man, but just one good Samaritan. How many sheep got lost and became the object of the concern of the shepherd? Just one. Just one. How many were needed to confront an adulterous David and bring him to his knees in humility? Well, just one prophet who was available. Pretty amazing, isn't it? How many were needed who had bread and fish to feed a crowd of 5,000? Just one little boy. Just one little boy. How many were needed to defeat Goliath? Just one little boy with a slingshot and a stone. How many did it take to give you the opportunity for eternal life through a death, a burial, and a resurrection? Just one. And that was Jesus Christ. You know, the hardest thing that I ever did in my life, and there's been some hard things, was to stand in a hospital and watch my only son die. And watch my wife watch her only son die. And watch his wife watch her husband die. And watch my two grandsons watch their daddy die. And there was absolutely nothing I could do. And I would have. I would have. And as painful as that was for me, and as difficult as it is today, I never experienced anything that made me more aware of the love of God. And here's the reason why. You say, why do you say that? Here's the reason why. I watched my son die and couldn't do a thing about it. But God watched his son die outside of Jerusalem for me. He watched his son die outside of Jerusalem for you. And he could have stopped at any time. But he loved me and you so much that he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And so this morning, how many does it take to make the decision to participate in Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection through the watery grave of baptism? Where there's forgiveness of sins, receiving the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. When we sit there and think about it, just one. Just one. And that one is you. Nobody else can make it for you. But that one is you. And so no matter where you come from, no matter that you feel like you aren't worthy enough to be used by God, remember, Jesus used a bunch of flawed people to share hope to a flawed and broken world. He used one person sometime or another to talk about Jesus to you. To you. And I'm reminded of the woman at the well in John chapter 4. And you all know that story. And when you turn over there, why did she come to get water at the time of day that she was there? Because nobody wanted to have anything to do with this flawed woman. I mean, after all, she had been divorced 5 times. But Jesus still used her. Read that story. That's an amazing story about what that one woman that was so flawed that nobody wanted to have anything to do with, what that one woman did for all of that city that didn't want to have anything to do with her. Don't let people count you out because you have a complicated past. Because we all have complicated past because of sin. Because you see, Jesus preserves your future. He preserves my future. Jesus didn't call the equipped. Jesus called those who were available. And then he equipped them to do what he wanted to be done. He equipped them to do the job that was out there. And so this morning, behold, I stand at the door and I'm calling. I'm paraphrasing that a little bit out of the book of Revelation. But behold, I stand at the door and I'm calling. The phone is ringing. The phone is ringing. And the question is this morning, are you available? Are you available? Whatever your need is this morning, please take the opportunity to respond while together we stand and while we sing.